Hello everyone, it's Vivi and welcome to the channel. With Jak Daxter the Precursor Legacy entering its year of anniversary, while 20th for that matter, Gamesradar got the opportunity to get in touch with some of the key folks who worked on the first Jak Daxter game at Naughty Dog. To give you a bit of a reminder, Jak Daxter the Precursor Legacy launched on the PlayStation 2 on December 3rd, 2001. The key folks we have being mentioned in this interview by Gamesradar are co-founders Jason Rubin and Andy Gavin, art director Bob Rafei, animators Eric Iwasaki and Rob Titus. 20 years later, we realized that Jak Daxter the Precursor Legacy, or TPL for short, played a pivotal role in shaping up the studio into what it is today, despite Rubin and Gavin exiting the company during the development of Jak X in 2004. Jason Rubin is currently vice president at Play at Facebook. Andy Gavin actually released two novels, one in 2011, The Darkening Dream, which revolves around history and the theme of paranormal, and the other one in 2012, Untimed, deals with the theme of time travel. Jason Rubin's will to push the technical boundaries of the game and Andy Gavin's will of technical innovation, while TPL definitely left quite a memorable mark on how they went about developing games at Naughty Dog. In other words, brand new IPs. 20 years ago, Jak Daxter was their third IP. Back then, Universal owned Crash, and before Crash Bandicoot, we had another game called Way of the Warrior for the 3DO in 1993 North America. A game also developed for Universal. Pretty much, Crash was owned by Universal and they had a deal with Sony to then publish their games exclusively on the PlayStation. Thinking back, Jason Rubin believed the relationship with Sony and Universal was pretty hostile. Continuing to pursue Crash Bandicoot was no longer a good financial choice. Although we loved Crash Bandicoot and we loved working with Sony, it didn't make any financial sense. Universal owned the IP, and there was a hostility there that was just brutal. With that in mind, Rubin believed it was time to branch out. Rubin thought it'd be a good idea that he himself would lead the primary team to finish off Crash Team Racing, and then have Andy Gavin along with key programmers to start working on a brand new engine for their next game. Sometime in 1999, Andy Gavin enticed his fellow QA testers to travel to Japan for 48 hours with all expenses paid with plenty of jet lag. I mean, who would refuse, right? At least there was a good meal involved. So they go there, they come back, and Sony ships them a PlayStation 2 dev kit. Some of the first PS2 dev kits to enter the USA. That already alone must have been such a big milestone for the team. The PlayStation 2. Sony, over 20 years ago, had a prototype PS2 dev kit, which was only sent to a couple of studios which they deemed trustworthy. This image right here originates from a Sony Dev conference presentation. Not saying this is what Naughty Dog had acquired 20 years ago, I mean, we're not too sure, but it's just cool to look at this thing. I mean, look at it. What Sony mostly sent out, we had the tool version of the PlayStation 2 dev kit, with some different variants, H representing networking support. Alas, when Naughty Dog received a dev kit, most likely the tool version, well, it remained in a safe locked room, given access to only a few key members, including PS5 architect Mark Cerny. Yeah, he used to work at Naughty Dog and was involved with the development process of Jak Daxter. Andy Gavin's work on a new engine led to the creation of a language development tool called GOL, which stands for Game Oriented Assembly Lisp. The Precursor Legacy was their very first game to utilize such a tool. Gavin wanted a programming language that would shorten the loop of development. With Crash, if you wanted to make a change in the code, it would take 10 minutes to compile, 5 minutes to link, and then you would have to download it to the dev unit and reboot before going through the level to see if it worked. Gavin added that he wanted the capability to change a code on the fly, like in the middle of the game, reducing the time it used to take to mere seconds. They did run, of course, into issues, but later down the line, they managed to switch codes and have it function. Now, one of the core things about Jak Daxter was to have no load times, and that was apparently something Jason Rubin swore by. As much as they had tricks to pull, changed things to make them work, how they wanted it to work and all that, it was quite a challenge for them. Heck, he even thinks they overachieved when working on the game. Gavin added, Jason is a great driving force because he's nagging, but in a good way because it comes from a good place within him about making the product better. It wasn't about his own ego or wanting to win or anything. It was about making the best game we probably could. After CTR shipped in 1999, Naughty Dog went on full production for TPL. What this meant for the game, they had to think about its story. This is where Bob Rafei, art director, steps in to explain his part of the story. During the concept phase of the game, Naughty Dog looked into the industry's media from back then, the likes of Star Wars, Disney, and Studio Ghibli. We didn't want it to be heavily science fiction. We wanted to have a sense of legacy. We landed on the archetype of this little farm boy, chasing his destiny as he tried to get out of the village. As for the wisecracking Daxter we all know and adore with all of our hearts, well, fun fact, he's considered a weasel-otter hybrid, if you didn't know. Well, looking at Daxter, they took inspiration from Disney's 1998 Mulan, more specifically, Mushu. Rafei specified that although they took inspiration from Mushu, they still wanted a little sidekick for Jak that resonated better with the team at Naughty Dog. He explained that they used to crack dirty jokes at one another, and that personality got reflected in Daxter. As for our silent protagonist, Jak, that too was something Jason Rubin tried to push for, because silent protagonists were popular during that gaming era. Jak being silent was their way of having the player feel immersed within the world of Jak, feeling as if you're the character in the game. Rubin even went on mentioning Gex. The feeling was that if you're playing the character and they tell a bad joke, you then distance yourself from that character. Gex was the perfect example of that at the time, a game that was quite accomplished that you didn't want to play because of the distance between you and that horribly just not you character. He then added that if you didn't like Daxter, it was fine because you were not Daxter. Once you have a character that is unburdened from the player's connection, you can have him be annoying, and you can have him be kind of out there, and those characters are always more interesting than the straight-played alternatives. Lead technical artist Eric Iwasaki believed it was a challenge for him and fellow animator Rob Titus to build character model for Jak, especially the fact that they now had to utilize the PlayStation 2's enhanced power. TPL would be their first project to utilize what they call skeletal deformation system. They were so used to simply using Maya for packaging and promotional renderings. Using a tool such as Maya for video game assets proved to be quite the challenge back then. The art team had to get themselves up to speed. Another challenge Naughty Dog set themselves up for? Bigger vistas. They wanted to keep a similar amount of detail like Crash when it came to designing levels, but by also wanting to add this sense of bigger view of the area for the player. We also wanted big vista views, like when you stand on the Forbidden Temple in the jungle at the beginning and you look out over the world and see where you've been and where you're going. That was something that we envisioned from the beginning, but then the challenge was how we could make that actually happen, because as powerful as the PlayStation 2 was, it couldn't draw a million polygons. Luckily, they had found a way to make that work. Art and technical department collaborated, and what they aimed for was to have Jak see his destination, but have that distance obscure it. This realization of theirs was codenamed Not Show the Man Behind the Curtain as much as possible. However, it doesn't mean it was easy. Blood, sweat, and tears, Gavin explained. On top of the pressures of working with a new engine and additional team members coming on board, it was a stressful environment, but it was a good stress. Naughty Dog was acquired by Sony during the final year of TPL's development. Even at that, Iwasaki explained that their relationship had quite an unusual level of trust. So much, in fact, Gavin believed they had already been considered a first-party studio before their acquisition. When developing TPL, there was no contractual obligations, but Sony was footing the bills, Gavin explained. Iwasaki added that the fact they had developed 4 games prior within the span of 4 years straight, it truly felt like a testament to them. That a legacy, he calls it, is what allowed them to produce a brand new IP such as Jak and Daxter. That kind of legacy allowed us to develop an original IP without even sharing much about it until Jason felt our game was ready to be presented. So pretty much what happened, they developed their own original IP, and once Jason believed it was ready to be presented, they simply teamed up with Sony because of the great relationship they already had prior. Jak TPL was critically acclaimed and had significant sales figures for its time, which of course helped eventually bring to life sequels. Jason Rubin shared his final thoughts on his experience working on Jak and Daxter. He stated that this IP allowed them to push the limit of things, whereas Crash Bandicoot was something that already existed and trying to make it work in 3D simply. The high quality bars we set for ourselves, and the determination to not miss them, is definitely a legacy that lasted after that. So with that being said, folks, this is it for the video. If you have any sorts of questions or anything of such sort, leave it all in the comment section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time.